Hopefully that's all worked okay and everybody can join us. Make sure everybody's admitted. Good morning, all. I'll give it a minute or so for everybody to join from the lobby. Hopefully that should happen relatively quickly. Many thanks for joining us this afternoon for our latest briefing event for the round of Agri Food Technology Contracts for Innovation Challenge. You might have seen our previous one. This is the second round of challenge funding that we've done in this area. Great response to the first round, so we're hoping for an equally positive response to this round of challenge. So if I can go to the first slide, please. As you'll note, this event is being recorded so that we can upload a version of this recording onto the Simply Do platform for anybody who couldn't make it today, but also if you want to kind of go over anything that you've heard today, you'll be able to access this through Simply Do after this event. So everybody's cameras and microphones are disabled other than presenters. We'll be hearing from a number of presenters during this briefing event. And what we'd ask is that you use the Q&A function so that we can kind of collate all those questions and answer them at the end of today's session. The chat function should be disabled. However, we would ask that you make sure that you put your questions in the Q&A function just to make sure we can't miss anything. We will hope to cover as many questions as possible in today's event. If we do miss anything or if there's anything we can't answer on the day, we'll take that away and we'll provide answers to that on Simply Do after today's event along with the recording. If I can go to the next slide then, please. Thank you. So in terms of the agenda for today, just hearing from myself in terms of the introductions to the call for today. We'll then be hearing from Steve Parks from Welsh Government Innovation, who'll cover off the Welsh context of contracts for innovation, previously SBRI. But then we'll then hear from Innovate UK, Tom Doyle. After that, we'll be going across to the challenge lead, who's Dr. Nicholas Shilton, Head of Food Technology, Innovations and Clusters. Then back to me just for a short run through in terms of the funding envelope and the key dates for this challenge. We'll then go over to Simply Do, who'll run through the challenge portal and show you how you complete your applications and hopefully cover off how that portal works. Then we'll move to the Q&A section for today. So we've got plenty of time for Q&A today, so please put as many questions as you can in the Q&A section and we'll do our best to cover those all off at the end. Next slide, please, Anya. So just to give you a bit of background information, so my name's Kate Williams. I'm a Programme Manager in the SBRI Centre of Excellence. The SBRI Centre of Excellence is funded by Welsh Government, but hosted by Betsy Cadwaladr Health Board. So our bread and butter are health-related challenges, and we do that on a all Wales basis, working with public sector to identify their unmet needs. However, you can't get away from the fact that the environmental well-being, social impacts, economic impacts, they're all involved in terms of everybody's individual well-being. So things like environmental health, access to healthy, sustainable food, and access to well-paid, secure jobs all contribute to individual well-being and the well-being of Wales as a whole. So actually delivering challenges such as these, which we kind of call our non-health arm of our centre, are vitally important to making sure that we're addressing some of those additional aspects that all contribute to the well-being of individuals and well-being of Wales as a whole. So that's why we kind of work with public sector to identify a whole broad range of challenges, not just specific to public Wales and health. So alongside that, we support the public sector to develop their challenges with an emphasis on things that are relevant to Wales. We work with funding providers to secure fundings for these challenges. And if you've been an applicant to Small Business Research Initiative challenges in the past, which is now called Contracts for Innovation, you'll know that they're 100% funding for R&D. So basically, if you're successful in your application, you'll be awarded a contract for R&D services at a fair market rate, which is why we're able to kind of avoid the additional complications of traditional grant funding. So we as a team alongside working with the public sector, we deliver the full project management process that sits around this challenge. And the main part about that is, supporting those collaborations with those problem owners and hopefully individuals such as yourself, which can bring the solutions forward to address those unmet needs. So we support both the challenge owner and the innovative suppliers to work together throughout this process with a core focus on making sure deliverables are met and that actually you're working with those end users throughout the development of your solutions to make sure we're getting solutions that are fit for purpose at the end of these challenges. Aside on to that as well is we also deliver recognised training to help kind of boost the skills and innovation capacity within Wales and across the public sector. So that's hopefully enough about us in terms of the SBRI Centre of Excellence. Soon to change our name to Contracts for Innovation Cymru. I'll now hand over to the first of our speakers for today, which is Steve Park from Welsh Government Innovation. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks very much, Kate. It's a pleasure to be here for this event. So thanks very much for having me. I'm going to speak briefly on the sort of the context for Welsh Government support for innovation and where Contracts for Innovation / SBRI stands in that equation. And I'm sure as we move forward, we'll no longer say Contracts for Innovation / SBRI. We'll just say Contracts for Innovation, but we're a little bit in that transition phase at the moment. So just to introduce myself initially, as you can see up there in lights, my name's Steve Parks and I'm a collaboration specialist with the Welsh Government's innovation team. And my role is to support organisations of all types, so SMEs, research organisations, third sector bodies, public bodies, to collaborate on innovation activity. If we can skip on to the next slide. So that document that you can see there, that's our innovation strategy, Wales Innovates. That was published back in February of 2023, and a support and delivery plan came out in the autumn, so of October of 2023. And that sort of set out what our ambition was to create a stronger, fairer and greener Wales, as it says on the front cover, or says on the tin there. We recognise innovation's key to our success, but it's a word that appears everywhere and it means different things to different people. So from a Welsh Government perspective, we wanted to try and keep things as simple as possible in terms of what do we mean by innovation. So what we're interested in is giving life to new ideas to create either new or improved products, processes or services, which can in turn make the lives of the people of Wales better. So that's a succinct and an explanation I can get of it, but I'm open to suggestions to improve that. But that's how we've defined it. We recognise that we can't get there on our own, and we believe that a collaborative approach will help us have the greatest impact. So that's one of the reasons why it's particularly exciting to be here today talking to you. If we can skip forward to the next one. Right, so our innovation strategy's got a significant role in playing in delivering against our programme for government commitments. And there's some just highlights of what we're looking to achieve there. We're looking to give organisations of all kinds the best possible environment to be innovative, to support their growth and promote the wider societal benefit that we can all gain from innovation. We're looking to encourage effective collaboration across different types of organisations, and that will create that culture of a community of innovation and a community of innovators that we're looking to garner. More pertinent perhaps towards what we're looking at today, we're very interested in supporting the procurement of innovative solutions within the public sector and making sure that we can engage as many different types of solution providers with great ideas to enable that process. If we can move on to the next one. Right, so our umbrella support for organisations in Wales is called Smart Flexible Innovation Support, or SFIS. It's good to pronounce the S first because SFIS is quite difficult to say. So Smart Flexible Innovation Support is the mechanism that we use to support our organisations. It's the front door to our support. It offers advice and guidance to our team of innovation and collaboration specialists. You've got a diverse range of experience from different industries and expertise in different technology areas. We have some good networks at our fingertips. We're members of a couple of international bodies, the Vanguard Initiative and the Enterprise Europe Network. So both of those offer an opportunity to assist in identifying collaborative partners for innovation activity in other regions across Europe and beyond. And part of my role is to help sort of facilitate that. And we have a number of agreements and understandings with specific regions. But in terms of the world as a whole, Wales is open for business, and we can support organisations to grow through collaboration within Wales, in the rest of the UK, and internationally as a result of that. We're a delivery partner for the internationalisation element of Innovate UK's business growth programme. So our collaborative relationship with Innovate UK grows stronger by the day as a result of that. And what that network offers, it's a little bit of a scary thought for today, possibly, is within the network of Enterprise Europe Network, there are people like me in all the regions signed up in the network that can help facilitate activity and collaboration. We also provide funding, financial support through the form of grants, and in terms of supporting procurement through supporting the Contracts for Innovation / SBRI mechanism, he says, for possibly the last time. If we can skip on to the next slide, please. So in order to support the objectives set out in the sort of in the programme for government literature, we've got a number of priority areas that underpin our investment sort of decisions as we move forward. They're quite broad and cover a large amount of areas. And in terms of where does innovation happen, it happens across all of those areas and beyond, but those are just some areas that we have a particular focus in. So as you can see, agri-tech, food, and the rural economy plays a strong part in our sort of agenda moving forward, and in terms of the activity that we are looking to support. We can move on to the next one. So Contracts for Innovation plays an important role in supporting the procurement of innovation by enabling the public sector to engage with industry during the early stages of development. And we use these challenges to take the right approach to problem solving. So starting with the problem and then working through with innovative solution providers to find the most appropriate solution. And we enable businesses to research new opportunities through fully funded research and development contracts. So that gives you the space to explore those new ideas through a phased development program that minimises the risk and helps identify the most promising projects for us to take forward. I think there's one or maybe two more slides. So next one from me. This is our show-off slide that we have at the end, where we basically say that the Contracts for Innovation / SBRI approach has worked very well for us, to the point where we've shared what we do with different administrations internationally. So we can, I think, still justifiably claim to be world leaders in this field. We've invested, as Kate said, in establishing the SBRI Centre of Excellence, hosted by Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board, and we've been, without wanting to make anyone blush, we've been reaping the rewards ever since. They do a fantastic job for us in giving life to these challenges. And the approach has been recognised in the terms of awards. It's always nice to get some recognition. So the rapid sanitising of ambulances challenge that was run around the sort of those COVID times, if we can cast our minds back there, and the childhood obesity and affordable nutritious food challenges were both recognised. It's good that we've had acknowledgement of what is a mechanism that we use often and use to good effect, and we're very much grateful for the Centre of Excellence's support in enabling us to do that. So I think the next slide probably just confirms who I am again, but if we can skip on to that one. Yeah, so in terms of anything you've heard today, we're going to move on, I think, more around the sort of specifically the Contracts for Innovation mechanism and this specific challenge. But in terms of anything from a wider Welsh Government innovation perspective that anyone wants any answers to or wants to explore further, those are my contact details. So that's my email address, and that's our team email address. So collaboration@gov.wales will also get to myself and my team, and I'll be happy to engage with anyone on the call today. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steve. If I can now hand over to Tom Doyle from Innovate UK then, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks both. And hi everyone, I'm Tom Doyle. I work at a very small team at Innovate UK that focuses on using the public sector procurement to enable the public sector to support and benefit from innovation. Some of the slides will probably overlap with what Steve said a bit, but I'll try not to speak to those sections too much to avoid any duplication. Next slide, please. So there has been for some time a focus on procurement, increasingly so with the new Procurement Act and regime and the Commercial Innovation Hub, which is being set up within DCIT. It's a way of improving public sector efficiency and effectiveness, particularly in line with the government's mission-driven approach, but also, when budgets are really tight, is a particularly important tool to try and, increase efficiency or effectiveness. Yeah, and very simply put, if you buy in a more efficient or effective solution, you improve that efficiency and effectiveness. But I think the other reason this has been such a focus, particularly in research and policy, and hopefully moving through into delivery more and more, is that the public sector spends somewhere between £300 and £400 billion every year across the UK procuring goods and services. So there's a massive financial lever there that governments can use to try and be more efficient. And by governments, I mean both central departments and regional bodies and more local public sector organisations such as councils and so on. Next slide, please. So that procurement of innovation that Steve mentioned earlier is generally split into two areas. PPI, the procurement of innovation, and pre-commercial procurement, PCP. The public procurement of innovation, PPI, is that the public sector being an early adopter, instead of just going to a framework, for example, and buying the same old thing, the public sector organisation has tried to look at the market and say, what if we do this differently? And through that sort of pre-market engagement, they found there's some really cool, innovative stuff out there that's better than what they're doing. And then they run a procurement to get that into use or trial and demonstrate it first if they want to. But if they do that and there's not anything out there that's suitable to improve their ways of working, then pre-commercial procurement is sort of the stage before that. So there's nothing out there at the moment. We're going to do pre-commercial procurement, recently changed to contracts innovation, to develop a solution to that challenge. So it's used when a commercially available solution doesn't exist. It's the R&D and innovation. It's the R&D element, sorry, prior to adoption of innovation. Next slide, please. So Innovate UK are the custodians of pre-commercial procurement or contracts for innovation in the UK on behalf of all public sector organisations. Pre-commercial procurement was originally designed by the European Commission in the early 2000s as a way of the public sector more evenly balancing the risks and benefits of R&D between the funding organisation and the organisation that is funded. It's designed so that no matter the size of award, it's not a subsidy, and therefore it's less disruptive to the market than a subsidy-based approach, which the majority of grant-based funding is. It was implemented in the UK in 2008, and since then there's been about £1.8 billion invested in R&D through this mechanism. A couple of years ago, there was an independent evaluation of the mechanism, which you can find on the UKRI website if you want to delve into a bit more detail. And as Steve's pulled out a couple of examples, there have been some great success stories with significant savings for the public sector. Next slide, please. So just a quick note, because I did mention it in passing earlier, on the new Procurement Act. Even though it says 2023, it only came into force a few months ago, earlier this year. It is quite a big shake-up in the public sector procurement regime, and there are a few things in that act in particular which should help get more innovation into use in the public sector. There's an increased sort of emphasis on transparency, so more notices going out, one of which should, for big needs, ensure that public sector organisations are putting out notices a long time in advance of those needs. So that helps innovators know, in 3-5 years, what does the public sector really want? What could I be working towards now? There's also an emphasis on pre-market engagement. So like I said earlier, instead of just going and buying the same old thing, public sector organizations over a certain threshold will have to justify why they're not going out to look and do some pre-market engagement prior to any sort of procurement route. So it's a default to do it and a justification not to do it. And then there's the competitive flexible procedure, which essentially is an option to do contracts for innovation or pre-commercial procurement or any sort of variety of flexible, innovative funding mechanisms that public sector organizations want to come up with within the procurement regime, whereas previously it's always had to be totally outside the procurement regime. So that should just streamline, when solutions are developed into adoption and use. Next slide, please. So before I go through when we might choose to use contracts for innovation, I will just say that it is a funding mechanism, and if you're struggling to get your head around it a bit, the easiest way I think to think of it is just as an alternative to a grant-based approach. They're used in different circumstances depending on a variety of things. So when we're using contracts for innovation, we're not giving a grant to do R&D, we're awarding a contract for R&D services. As I've said, it's pre-commercial procurement, so it wouldn't be used if there's a commercially available solution already out there that meets user needs. It's very outcome-driven mechanism with funding to solve a particular public sector operational or policy challenge. It does require a lead customer, the knowledge that if a solution were to be developed, there's a public sector organization that would want to adopt this, or perhaps, in other circumstances, private organizations that would adopt this and help meet that public sector need. But we want to know that somebody will, if a solution is developed, adopt and put this into action, because that's when we really get the impact from the investment in the R&D. And the challenges do need to be well defined, so much, to the extent that innovative organizations like yourself can develop solutions to them. We do try as far as possible not to define what that solution looks like in any way, but sometimes public sector pots of money do come attached to certain technologies, so there is some flex in that. And we do always encourage consideration and buy-in from the wider system, so we try and get procurement people involved as well as the technical experts in the public sector organization, and most importantly the sort of end user perspectives as well. Next slide, please. So how does contracts for innovation differ from other, perhaps more grant-based funding mechanisms that you may be familiar with? Obviously, you'll find full details in the competition information, but I will just pick out a couple of things that differ in contracts for innovation in particular. As a new name, branding strongly suggests, and has been mentioned a few times already, it is a contract that's awarded, not a grant. That contract covers 100% of costs, with payments made on completion of milestones and in relation to the costs needed to deliver those milestones. Costs quoted must reflect actual incurred costs, and they can't include profit for the lead organisation. And contracts are always with a single organisation. That organisation can choose to subcontract if they want for specialist skills, but they have to justify that. And that lead organisation should be carrying out the majority of work. The idea behind this is that lead organisation develops the solution and then commercializes it, and then hopefully, if everything goes to plan in the future, we'll sell to get this challenge solved. So, and that just ensuring one organisation sort of helps to streamline that route to market. So that's the idea behind that. Where did I get to on these bullet points? So another difference is that the public sector funder retains some usage rights to the foreground IP. That's IP developed during the project. Essentially, that those terms and conditions have been written in there since the start of this by the European Commission. It's so that it complies with subsidy control, and it's also to ensure that taxpayers aren't paying for 100% of costs to develop this solution and then at a later date somewhere buried in the in the procurement, there's also a cost to taxpayers for just the rights to use that IP that they've already paid to develop. So that's the thinking there. The ownership of the IP remains with the applicant organisation, and very much encouraged to go and exploit it and use it as far as possible. It's just really there to help us stay on the right side of subsidy control. Yeah, as it doesn't restrict, in any way the sale of future solutions to other organisations. And as I say, we've got a number of great success stories from businesses that have been through this and grown exponentially. So, Innovate UK wouldn't support it if it wasn't conducive to growth of the UK economy. So, yeah, but do just familiarise yourselves with that before making an application. And like other public sector procurements, the competition has to be open to all types and sizes of organisation, but all types of organisation must still set out a route to commercialisation. So higher education institutes are fine, but they've got to commercialise or have a plan how to commercialise too. Next slide, please. I think this is the last one from me. So this is just a textbook example of the process. Contracts for innovation is in the yellow sort of section, and generally there are a greater number of smaller value projects funded at earlier feasibility stages, and then the best solutions are down selected through to later stages where there are generally fewer but larger value projects as you get in towards demonstration in real world environments and so on. Competitions can start anywhere along this spectrum, so do definitely refer to the particular competition for further details. And yeah, I think that the sort of blue section there is when things are getting adopted. So that's well, hopefully that grey line between the yellow and blue sections on that slide is what we're hoping the new Procurement Act will solve a bit and get rid of that solid grey line, and it'll all happen seamlessly. Is the idea at some point. But I'll leave it there. I think there's some contact details on the next slide. But just do get in touch if you want to have a chat on the mechanism specifically further. Otherwise, competition specific questions should go to get the contact points provided in the competition information.
Excellent, thank you, Tom. If I can now hand over to Dr. Nicholas Shilton, please.
Thank you very much, Kate. So my name is Nick Shilton. I work in the food division of Welsh Government, Head of Food Technology, Innovation and Clusters. Can I have the next slide, please? So just to give some context, in 2024, the agri-food industry, so that's agriculture and food production, employed nearly 250,000 people across Wales, having a turnover value of 27 billion. So, and about 28,000 business units involved in food production. So that's obviously on-farm units, on-farm and off-farm. So, it's a significant employer, significant part of the Welsh economy, which is why, we want to invest in it. Could I have the next slide, please? So to set the scene and picking up on some of the slides that Stephen showed you, 2023 we published an innovation strategy for Wales, and within that document, food and agri-tech were seen as a key part of Wales' future economic development. Later in 2023, the World Government published a separate agri-tech action plan for food in Wales, and this and then previously to that we had produced a vision for food and drink industry, which had a broad vision and mission, but again, innovation technology was a core part of that thing. So, we've been wanting to support innovation in this space for some time, so it's not just a new thing. Next slide, please. So this challenge, again, this is probably building on the same slides we've already seen, is looking for innovations to increase efficiency, productivity, sustainability, and those links to the Sustainable Farming Scheme are quite important now in Welsh agriculture and agri-food supply chains, giving environmental benefits and accelerating transition to net zero. And the next slide, if we can, we'll start to lay down what those challenges are. We've got 4 challenge themes this time. Sorry, I made a mistake in the slide there, which I'll go through just in a bit more detail now. Just say what we're actually looking for this time around. But last time it was quite broad. We've got 4 specific challenge themes this time. So next slide, please. So the first 2 challenges are to investigate opportunities for new product development and market opportunities for sheep milk in Wales, as well as looking for solutions and barriers for solutions of barriers and challenges regarding potential of a farm businesses to diversify into production of sheep milk. So what are the technical challenges, what are the technical barriers, and what can innovation be used to sort of overcome those? The second challenge, again, very specific, using data such as that from LoRaWAN sensors. Apologies to any IT people who are on the call. To develop innovative nature-based solutions regarding flood, water, and soil nutrient management to support communities and agricultural land, bringing wider catchment benefits. So, sorry, that's quite specific, but again, when you look back to the sustainable farming scheme, it is quite an important. This is very key in what both the universal layer and the optional layers within the sustainable farming scheme, so which is why this is included. Next slide. Then again, there is quite linked to sustainable farming, loss of nitrogen, phosphorus affect water quality, and reducing pollution is critically important to mitigating the impacts of climate change. We did have projects last time, but again, this is to sort of further try and focus activity in this area, with a particular, as you can see in the second part of this challenge, looking at use of buffer zones to address nutrient losses, and how you address nutrient buildup in these buffer zones to mitigate any long-term losses. So it's not one thing to remove it or put it into a buffer zone. What you do with it, preventing it from being washed out in the future. And finally, the fourth challenge will be, if next slide, thank you. This is about using regenerative materials for such as timber, straw, hemp, or reclaimed recycling building materials in a positive impact on the natural environment. So restore natural resources, enhancing biodiversity. We're looking for ideas that sort of allow the use of this sort of materials that can be harvested in Wales. So what is out of scope, though, is any product that's reincorporated back into the soil or then used as a growing medium. That's out of scope within this challenge. This is very much about sort of building stroke construction and using those materials in a sustainable way. And again, this is directly linking to the sort of timber strategy. So that's one strategy I forgot to mention for Wales, and sort of, again, that links back straight into the sustainable farming scheme. So next slide, please. So out of scope will be projects, we don't demonstrate that engagement with the agricultural food supply chains. We want to see that evidence of engagement with potential future customers to understand the needs, consider affordability and practicality, and fail to consider potential side effects and mitigations. So that's particularly important in the buffer zone project, for example, that it's not doing one thing doesn't then cause an effect somewhere else. And that's my quick presentation. Do apologise for the speed of that, but obviously I'm happy to answer questions in the Q&A, and I'll now hand you back to Kate.
Excellent. Thank you, Nick. So yeah, I'm just going to go over some of the broader details of the challenge. So mainly things around the budget available and also the key dates as well. So for this particular round of phase 1 funding, so we're looking at supporting up to 6 feasibility projects and for the value of up to £40,000 for each project, excluding VAT. A key focus will be on the potential affordability and scalability and how you can demonstrate that within this early feasibility projects. One thing that I did want to kind of mention, though, is that if this is building upon previous trials or small scale testings, please make sure that you articulate this within your application and make sure you kind of make clear how this will help you accelerate that development. So how it'll take you to the next stage in terms of the development of that solution. Another thing to note as well is that within the application, there's a section there that asks you about previous or ongoing funding. So if you have got other applications, I can see there's a question around Innovate UK funding in the Q&A section. But if you've applied or are in the process of receiving additional funding that relates specifically to this solution that you're developing, please make sure you include that within your application and make sure you're as clear as possible on what the separation is between those deliverables. So it's not a matter of that if you've had funding, you can't have additional funding, but it's making sure that we're not duplicating activities. At the end of the day, we're responsible for public funding and making sure that's used to the best of its benefit. And so we just need to make sure that we're clear on that there's separation and there's no duplication across different funding arms. So we work very closely, for example, with Innovate UK in terms of when we deliver challenges such as these. So we do look to make sure that we're content that there is sufficient separation between potential funding opportunities. Next slide, please. So Nick did previously cover in terms of what's out of scope in regards to these applications, but just want to draw your attention to some of the things that we'll be looking to see built into your application. So as Nick said, it's really important that we're engaging Welsh end users, people who are part of the supply chain within Wales, and that you can demonstrate that you're working with those individuals or those organisations throughout the delivery of your project to make sure that we're able to kind of demonstrate that your solution can meet the environmental needs of Wales, but also regulatory needs of Wales as well. We're looking to see a clear plan for your deliverables. As Tom mentioned, these are contracts for innovation. Payments are made on deliverables being successfully met. So we're looking to see a clear plan outlined within your application to give that confidence that you can deliver this within the timescales available. Within the Simply Do platform, you'll see a number of different links to relevant strategies and policies. So try and look to those and make yourself familiar with those and demonstrating how you can potentially benefit and deliver positive contribution to those particular goals that are identified within those links. We do ask that you consider and address where necessary equality, diversity and inclusion aspects across your project. As Nick already mentioned, we're looking to see clarity on environmental benefits and that this being considerably considered within your application. In terms of, we don't want to benefit one environmental area and then have a negative impact on the other. So it's making sure you've considered that appropriately and you include that within your application. These are early feasibility, and so hopefully the level of risk in terms of personal safety is low. However, as part of your risks within your application, do make sure that you've covered areas such as that in terms of personal safety. And obviously, we're looking to make sure that these are solutions that can provide benefits. So as part of the project delivery, we're looking to see that you've appropriately evaluated your project, and that includes setting out a benefits analysis and an economic analysis to make sure that you can clearly outline if your solution was to be brought to market, what benefit that could have for Wales. Next slide, please. So these are the current key dates for the challenge. They may be subject to change, but this is what we're running to at this current time. So the close date for this challenge will be 12 p.m. on Wednesday, the 24th of September. I've said this at many briefing events and I'll say it again. Please don't leave it to the last minute to submit your application for that 12 p.m. deadline. If you do have issues, we need to be notified of that as early as possible, because if you try to submit after that 12 p.m. deadline, I'm afraid your application won't be able to be considered. So please don't leave it till the last minute, just in case you do have any issues with that application. Following the close date, we'll then look to assess those applications from the 25th to 26th of September, and hoping to shortlist by the following Monday. Potentially, we may look to hold a meet and greet with suppliers, so that'll be a short presentation session with the assessors and potential project board in case they have further questions that need clarifying before we award the contracts at the end of that. Our hope is that we will be able to release the decision by Monday, 6th of October, and to award those contracts shortly after. In terms of the actual project delivery, our aim at this time is for projects to start work on Monday, the 27th of October, once the signed contracts are in place, with a potential completion date of the 20th of February. Following the completion of on-the-ground activities, we will be looking to see a final report submitted by the 27th of February, and then we'll look to have a project board within March just to kind of approve and sign off on those final payments. As I said, they can be subject to change, but we'll keep you updated if that does happen. So I think that's probably everything from me. Just as a reminder, what I'll do, I'll also pop the link directly to the Simply Do page in the post. I'll now hand over to Josh from the Simply Do platform before we come back to the questions at the end. So Josh, if I can hand over to you then, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for that, Kate. I'm just going to spend the next 5 minutes then walking you through the Simply Do platform. So the starting place for this demonstration will be from the link that Kate will share with yourselves. So when you arrive then at the Simply Do platform, you'll see you are on the challenge page for the Agri Food Challenge. I'm not going to walk through all of the content here, but I'm just going to draw our attention to a couple of places. A lot of this information has been talked about today within today's session. So you'll find anything around today's session in regards to the scope, the challenge themes, etc., all inside of this challenge page on Simply Do. The relevant links and documentation can be found within this page, so either scattered within the text or right at the bottom of the page, which I'll show in a moment. So again, we can see the funding details, what's in scope, what's out of scope. When you come down to the briefing event section, as you can see at the moment, it currently says register for briefing event, but that is also where we will place any slides or recordings or anything that we have from this briefing event into this section for you to access afterwards. We've got a reminder of the key dates, and then at the bottom then we've got all of the relevant helpful links, documentation that you might need to access prior to or during the application phase of this challenge. All that you need to do though is click create your idea, and at that point you'll be taken through to the registration screen. If you have an account, log into it. If you don't, just register for an account on Simply Do, and then once you've registered, you'll arrive at this screen here. This is the application screen. This has all of these sections that are due to be completed within your application. So working your way through, all that's required of you is to complete the application form. And once you've completed that form, submit. You'll notice there's supporting guidance for each of the questions. The platform will save for you as you work your way through the application. So you don't need to save your progress as you're working through this. You can do a little bit, come back to it on another day, close it down, work on it in your own time, and the platform will save your progress for you as you're going through this process. If you want to work collaboratively with individuals, come over to the collaborators section and click add a collaborator and type in the email address of the individual that you'd like to work on this application with. That individual can then work on a different section to yourself within the same application. All that you need to do then is work your way through the application, completing every section that's required. And then finally, when you're at the bottom, all that's left to do is click submit. This button will show once you've completed all of the mandatory fields inside of the application. Kate mentioned this already. If the competition deadline passes, you will not be able to submit this. So make sure you've reached out to the relevant individuals if you have any issues in that regard. Finally, if you do have any issues with the product, so if you've lost your application, you can't add a collaborator, any other technical issues, come to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen here and open up a conversation with myself or another member of the Simply Do team, and we'll be on hand to support. We can't support with answering any of the questions, but if there are any product related or Simply Do related questions, please come down there and get in touch with us. You can make amendments after you've submitted, but only if the competition is still open. So if you submit and then realize you need to make a change, you can go back into edit mode, edit your selection and resubmit. But that resubmission must happen prior to the deadline of the competition. Happy to hand over, Kate, back to yourself if there's anything, unless there's anything else you want me to cover here.
Brilliant, thank you. No, that's everything covered as usual, Josh. Thank you, brilliant. As Josh said, if you've got any questions directly relating to the portal, there is a messaging function within the portal that you can access. If you've got any questions directly relating to this challenge, I'm just popping in the chat our email addresses. Our email address was SBRI Centre of Excellence. We're in the process of changing over to Contracts for Innovation Cymru. However, if you use either one of those, it'll still reach us anyway. So hopefully you'll be able to contact us if you need any further clarification on anything else that we've covered today. One other thing to mention as well that I want to draw your attention to, as Tom mentioned, this is a contract for delivery. The contract is developed and held by Innovate UK, so it's a UK-wide contract, and we're not able to make changes to this. So I would advise you all to make sure you're familiar with the terms and conditions that are within that contract, because if you were successful in being awarded funding for your project, that is the contract that will be used, and it won't be subject to change after that contract is awarded. So please make sure that you're familiar with that. I'll now hopefully go through as many of the questions as possible. I know that Nick has been doing a great job answering them as we go along, so thank you for that. Nick, I'll try and cover off as many things as possible today. So first question that we had is the Funding Innovate UK for Welsh Government core funding, for Welsh Government core funding. So Nick has answered that this is Welsh Government funding only. As I did mention earlier, though, that if you have applied for other UK-wide funding, even if it's something you've already received or if you're in the process of awaiting for a response, there is a section within the application that refers to this. So please make sure you're really clear as possible about the separation between the deliverables. So if you're funded to do one project, what is different about this application, and how will it help you further develop your solution beyond the funding that you currently have available and have been awarded or you're in the process of trying to access? As I said, the clearer you are, the better it helps us to understand that separation right from the outset and avoids duplication of funding. So the next question that we have is in relation to the contract being with one lead organisation. So Contracts for Innovation is open to any organisation across the UK and I believe the EU as well. So you don't have to be a Welsh-based business in order to be that lead applicant. However, we are looking for solutions that can be demonstrated as having benefits for Wales. So what we'd be looking for as part of your application, that you have named organisations or individuals that you have already approached and are willing to work with you in terms of the development of your solution, so that we're making sure that anything that's developed takes into account the Welsh context, whether or not that's regulatory. So sometimes with Natural Resources Wales, some of the legislation and regulations can be different to the kind of elsewhere within the UK. So we need to have that confidence that you're working with the appropriate people throughout, and that you're potentially engaging those end users. So the people that's going to benefit and might purchase your solution at the end. So you're developing something that really meets their needs. So we'll be looking to see that named within your application, but you don't have to be a Welsh-based business in order to apply. Just make sure that you're developing those relationships as early as possible within the application. So I believe Nick has already answered this question, but for others to see the answer, I'll just mention this third question. Do food manufacturing byproducts, i.e. oils and protein wastes, count as residues for upcycling along with hemp, for example? So unfortunately, not in this in this instance. We are looking at bio-based materials such as timber, straw or hemp, and or reclaimed or recycled building materials. So I think Nick covered this a bit more in terms of his kind of overview of the challenge, and that is specific around those kind of build material elements. So unfortunately, that's not a part of this challenge. The next question we might have to pick up via email, if that's okay. So are foliar sprays considered as eligible? Nick has asked for some further detail to be provided on that in terms of the context of this challenge. So I have just Googled what foliar sprays are related to, and I don't believe it would be eligible, but please do email us following this briefing event and we can answer that in more detail via email after this call. So the next question is funding for phase 2 of this challenge confirmed, and can you tell us the value, please? Nick, I'm going to throw that over to you if that's okay to answer that question.
Yeah, so we are in the process of seeking funding for next year. As you can imagine, budgets for next year haven't been finalised yet. I am hoping that there will be funding, and I'm reasonably optimistic, and it will be at the same level as this year. So with 6 projects going through from this phase 1, we should be able to fund probably about 4 at about 120 to 140,000 each. But so it's not, that's not fixed in stone, but I am very confident, from what I'm, as much as any budget negotiation can take place. So, don't quote me, but we are optimistic that there will be a phase 2 confirmed.
Thank you, Nick. Just saw a comment from Kate Barrow. So we're not seeing any slides in your presentations. We're not seeing the slide deck move since halfway through Welsh Gov. Apologies for that. Teams sometimes works great. Sometimes it doesn't work quite as well as we hoped. However, we will be putting a copy of the slides on Simply Do after today's event alongside the recording. So you will be able to access the slides via the portal. And if you have any questions, once you've been able to see those slides, please let us know via the contact details that I've popped in the Q&A section. But apologies, that hasn't worked quite as we'd have hoped. So I think, again, this is going to hopefully be one I throw across next way, if that's okay. So the next question is, in Challenge 4, regenerative materials with recycled building materials, do we need to link to agriculture? Nick, if I can throw that one your way then, please.
No worries. We're about to have a thunderstorm here, so if I get cut off, I do apologise. The original material would have been expected to come from agriculture. That's why it's timber, the hemp, straw. So yes, you don't actually have to have an agricultural partner in this case, but you would be expecting to be sort of recycled that type of material. So there is that sustainability that we could then because obviously we do have a timber industry in Wales. We can grow hemp, we can grow straw. So it's that link back. So you don't have to have an agricultural partner if that's what the question is asking, but the material, that primary material would have first of all come from the agricultural field, if that makes sense. Happy to clarify over email if I haven't, which I don't often do. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Nick. I'm not seeing any other further questions at the moment. Hopefully I've addressed everything that's come up so far. But please do, if you've got any other questions, please pop them in the Q&A section now. We've got a fair bit of time to cover them all off, so hopefully we can add those in. I can see a comment, I think it's further down. Is seaweed biorefinery, I'll try and put my teeth in, sorry, is seaweed biorefinery for animal feed and biomaterials, biofertilizers and plant biostimulants? So I'm guessing that's in terms of whether or not that fits into the current context. Again, sorry, Nick, I'm going to throw that one your way. Hopefully I made sense with that one.
Seaweed wouldn't be eligible because it has, the one phrase I just realized is missing from it. It has to be land-based. And that we omitted that in the outer scope. This is where this funding comes from is land-based only. Sorry, I don't know if we can amend. We can put a note on the website to that effect. That's something in my head. We admitted, Kate. We'll talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, we can add that to the brief. And obviously we'd covered it in this recording, so hopefully everybody will be able to pick that up. Just scrolling through, hopefully we answered that question appropriately. If not, as I said, please do follow up with us via email and we may be able to go into slightly deeper answers if that would be useful.
Sorry, I just see Kat about regenerative. I've mentioned hemp, straw and wood. She's asking if it can be different crops. Yes, it can be different crops. Those are just examples, but it's very much, something like in that ilk of sort of crop-based or something that can be grown on agricultural land.
And I'm guessing that's the same, wetland crop can be considered within that as well. Bulrush, for example, I think that is used, isn't it? And in some, so that would be valid because it's a crop grown on land based. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions come through at this time. Hopefully we've addressed and said everything so far. Oh, there's another one coming through. It's the timing. Your application pack does suggest that there has to be at least one Welsh-based business. Please clarify again. So again, in terms of potential end users to your solution, but also potentially people that are involved within that supply chain as well. So if you are looking to demonstrate how these crops can be sourced, because some of the things that we've come across in the past, hopefully this will be useful context to share, but it's understanding what the demand is, but also whether or not Wales, in terms of the supply chains that it currently has, and growing capability as well, whether or not it would be sufficient to actually be able to deliver a solution of the appropriate scale. So it's really important that you're working with people within the supply chain, whether or not that's a end business who's potentially going to buy or use your solution, or whether or not they're potential supplier to the crop or anything else that you're developing within your solution as well. So what we would look to see is that you're naming that, you've made those connections. These are quite short projects. in terms of that feasibility. They are kind of tight timelines as always. So the more you can demonstrate that you have those connections within Wales prior to the start of the delivery of your project, the better in terms of, it gives us that confidence that you're able to progress quickly and be able to start the delivery of your project as soon as possible. What we don't tend to like, what is less beneficial if you've kind of not got that relationship already in place. So we award the contract and then you're looking for those relationships and those connections to start your project. That could potentially have a delay in terms of the overall timeline and your ability to meet deliverables. So we're looking to make sure that you've identified an appropriate stakeholder, that you've got their agreement that they are happy to work with you, and that you can name those organisations or that individual within your application form. They don't necessarily have to be a subcontractor, unless it's appropriate for them to do so. So in terms of that subcontractor, to secure their support in terms of the delivery, they may have a specific role, whether or not that's in terms of the materials they provide, or whether or not that's in terms of the research and development that they're supporting you and filling a skills experience gap as part of that application. Hopefully that provides sufficient clarification. As I said, it's really important to make sure those relationships are in place as early as possible so that you're able to deliver these projects in a timely manner. But if we've missed that or you need further context, again, please email. So next question is relating to tax reliefs and credits. So how does this funding impact on HMRC and tax reliefs and credits? So this is a contract for a service. So it's not subject to subsidy control. It sits outside of that because we're securing your services at a fair market rate. And as Tom mentioned earlier, that's at cost and doesn't include profit. So it should be included in regards, I think, I'm not a tax expert, unfortunately, but it should be included as revenue. So hopefully it shouldn't impact on your tax reliefs and credits, hopefully. But that's probably not the clearest of answers because I know that there's other different tax reliefs that might relate to this. But as I said, just to make it clear, this is not subject to subsidy control. It is a contract, 100% funded contract for R&D services at a fair market rate. Hopefully that provides clarity. If I've missed anything on that, please do drop me an email. I'm happy to follow that up separately if I've not been as clear, which I've got a feeling I might not have been, so apologies. Any more questions coming through? I'll give it a couple of minutes because sometimes it's a little bit of a delay before they show up on my screen. So as a reminder, the link to the portal, I've popped that in the Q&A section, so hopefully you should be able to access that. I've included both of our email addresses, so the SBRI Centre email and the Contracts for Innovation email. If you use either one of those, they should reach us successfully. If you've got questions related to the portal, as Josh said, please pop those through the Simply Do platform and they'll be able to help you with any technical questions or issues that you're having within those. As he did say earlier, you can amend your application, but be mindful, please, of the deadline of 12 p.m. and make sure that you're not leaving it to the last minute to submit your applications, because there'll be very little, unfortunately, that we can do if you do go beyond that 12 p.m. deadline. I'm not seeing any further questions. As I said, please feel free to follow up with us via email. Apologies if the slides again haven't worked quite as we'd have hoped. There will be copies available on the Simply Do platform along with the recording of today, and obviously if there's any follow-up questions we can provide answers to that. As Nick said, we will need to make a slight amendment just to make sure that we clarify that this is related to land-based solutions. So unfortunately things like seaweed and stuff like that aren't applicable within this current round of funding. I'm just scanning back through. Hopefully we've managed to answer as many questions as possible. If there is anything that we've missed, please do follow up with us via email. If I don't see any more coming through, then I'll draw this to a close. Many thanks to all the presenters for today and for all the attendees and your interest in this challenge. Thank you for your questions as always. Hopefully we provided sufficient clarity, but let us know if there's anything else that you'd like to know. best of luck with your applications. This is a great opportunity to develop some early feasibility solutions for Wales, and we are hoping for a good response, and so best of luck with your applications. I'm not seeing any further questions coming through, so again, many thanks for today. Please do follow up with us if there's anything missed, and yeah, best of luck. Many thanks all.